Hello everyone! Today we're going to work through a full TOEFL listening section together to see how prepared you are for this part of the exam. Keep track of how many questions you answer correctly. And don't forget to share your results in the comments. As usual, we'll go through 3 lectures and 2 conversations. After each question, I'll pause the video to give you some time to answer. And then I'll reveal the correct response. This won't happen on test day, but it's a great way to practice and review any mistakes right away. We'll also cover some key vocabulary from the lectures and conversations. So grab a pen or a pencil and let's dive in.
Listen to a conversation between a student and a university employee at the campus employment office.
Hi, can I help you?
I hope so. My name's Mark Whitman.
Don't I remember you from last year? You worked in, where was it? The art library?
Yeah, well, you're good. That was me, and I really enjoyed the work.
Right, yeah, your supervisor gave us some really great feedback at the end of the year. Oh, he's so organized, always on time, helpful.
Really? Well, I'm glad. It was a good job.
Well, we usually try to match students' jobs with their academic interests.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what career I'm headed for, but librarian is a possibility. It was a great experience to learn how it works and meet some people working in the field. But for this year, well, that's what I wanted to ask about.
Oh, how come you waited so long to come in? You know how fast campus jobs fill up. If you'd come in earlier, you could probably have gotten the library job again. I mean, since you have the experience from last year, you don't need the training and all. But it's been filled now.
Yeah, I know. But I'd planned to get a job working at a restaurant off campus this year. I really need to make more money than I did last year, and working as a waiter, there's always the tips. But, I've tried a ton of places and I haven't found anything. I know it's really late, but, well, I was wondering if maybe there was some job that hadn't been taken, or maybe, someone started a job and, had to drop it or something.
Well, I doubt you'll find anything.
Could you possibly check? I know it's a long shot, but my friend Suzanne, she takes photography classes in Harrison Hall, and she sort of thought there might be an opening in the janitorial staff.
Why does your friend, the photography student, think she has information about a janitorial staff opening? I'm pretty sure those jobs are filled. In fact, I remember taking lots of applications for them. But let me double-check it online.
She said the whole studio arts building, and especially the photo lab, have been kind of, sort of messy lately. I mean, she says there's, chemicals and stuff left out, and, it's like no one's been cleaning up. Oh, but that could just be, students using the lab after hours or something, like after it's been cleaned.
Hang on. There is, an asterisk next to one of the job numbers here. There's a note. Let's see. Your friend's right. Seems like one of the student janitors quit a couple of weeks ago for some reason. Well, whatever. It looks like this is your lucky day.
Wow, that is so great. So, who's the contact person?
Check with the janitorial office.
Fine. Thanks so much.
Why does the student go to the employment office?
The correct answer is C. The student goes to the employment office to find out about getting an on-campus job. He already got great feedback from his supervisor at the end of the year, so he doesn't need any more feedback.
Why does the university employee seem surprised at the student's request for on-campus jobs?
The correct answer is B. The woman is surprised at the student's request because she expected him to apply earlier in the semester. She says jobs on campus fill up very quickly, and the library job that a student had last year has already been filled.
What does the student imply about the job he had at the library last year?
The correct answer is B. It did not pay as well as jobs in restaurants. The student said he needed to make more money this year. And since waiters get tips, he wanted to get a job off campus in a restaurant. This means that his previous job at the library didn't pay very well.
Why does the student mention his friend Suzanne?
D is correct, to explain why he thinks there is a job opening. The student mentioned that his friend, Suzanne, takes photography classes in Harrison Hall, and she told him that there might be an opening in the janitorial staff.
What can be inferred about the woman when she says this?
Why does your friend, the photography student, think she has information about a janitorial staff opening?
The correct answer is C. She doubts the accuracy of the information. The woman is skeptical that a photography student would know about a janitorial staff opening. Well, that wraps up part 1. Here is some useful vocabulary we came across in this conversation. Janitor. A janitor is a person employed to take care of a large building, such as a school or college. He or she deals with the cleaning, repairs, and so on. Janitorial. Janitorial means relating to the job of being a janitor. In the conversation, the woman said janitorial staff, which is a more formal way of saying janitors, to fill up. To fill up means to become full. Campus jobs fill up very fast. A long shot. A long shot is something you try, even though it's unlikely to be successful. I know it's a long shot, but my friend Suzanne thought there might be an opening in the janitorial staff. Let's move on to the next part where you'll listen to a lecture.
Listen to part of a lecture in an earth science class. The class has been discussing volcanoes.
Okay, we know the Earth's surface, the crust, is made up of tectonic plates and that these huge slabs of rocky crust are slowly sliding over or under or past each other. And we said that most of the world's volcanoes occur at the boundaries of these tectonic plates, where you have hot molten rock squeezing up through gaps between the plates. But some volcanoes occur not at the edges, but in the middle of a continental or oceanic plate. The Hawaiian Islands, for example, are thousands of kilometers away from any plate boundary, and yet you have vast amounts of magma, molten rock or lava, flowing up through the Earth's crust, which means, of course, that volcanic activity there can't be explained simply by plate tectonics. So, how do we explain these volcanic anomalies, these exceptions to the general rule? Well, back in 1963, a geophysicist by the name of Wilson came up with a hot spot theory to explain how this particular type of volcanic activity can occur, and can go on for maybe tens or even hundreds of millions of years. Wilson's theory was that hotspots exist below tectonic plates, and they're the cause of these volcanoes. But what causes the hotspots? Well, the most popular theory that's been proposed is the plume hypothesis. According to this hypothesis, plumes, basically columns of extremely hot magma. These plumes well up from deep inside the planet's interior, maybe even as deep as its core, and rise all the way up to melt through the Earth's crust. Imagine a burning candle, and imagine moving a sheet of heavy paper slowly over the flame of the candle. You're going to get a series of burn spots in the paper. Well, that's just like what's happening with the Hawaiian Islands, but instead of a sheet of paper, you've got a tectonic plate, and it's moving over this plume of intensely hot magma, and rather than a series of burn spots in the paper, you're getting a chain of volcanic islands where the hot plume melts through the crust under the Pacific Ocean at one point after another, with active volcanoes on the younger islands that are now just above the plume. And the other islands, well, the farther away from the plume they are now, the older they are, and the longer ago their volcanoes went dormant or extinct. Incidentally, volcanic islands may seem small, but the island known as the Big Island of Hawaii is one of the tallest topographic features on the planet, more than 5 kilometers from the seafloor to the ocean surface, and almost that much again, up to its highest peak. That's nearly 10 kilometers from ocean floor to the highest point on the island, which makes it taller even than Mount Everest. So, you can imagine the huge amounts of magma or lava that have flowed up to form even just this one island, much less the whole chain of islands. Now, the plume hypothesis provides a pretty elegant explanation for a volcanic anomaly like the Hawaiian Islands, but while it's hypothetically attractive, there's very little direct evidence to support the theory because, so far, no one's been able to actually observe what's happening that far beneath the Earth's crust. Some studies have been done, seismographic, geochemical, where the data's consistent with the model, but they aren't definitive proof. Even the model supporters aren't comfortable claiming that it explains every volcanic anomaly, and, like any popular theory, I suppose, it has some determined critics. These critics have put forth a number of alternative theories, all unproven so far, but one well-regarded theory is the crack hypothesis, which assumes that hot spots are created when a piece of the crust gets stretched thinner and thinner, and the resulting stress causes small cracks to open up at weak spots in the crust. And it's through these cracks that magma pushes up to form volcanoes. Proponents of the crack hypothesis consider this a widespread phenomenon, and believe that magma's not coming up from deep within the Earth's interior, but rather from just beneath the surface crust. This hypothesis is attractive because it fits with what we already know about plate tectonics, and it fits what we know about some secondary smaller hotspots. But how well does it explain the Hawaiian Islands? Could a series of random cracks produce that same particular string of islands, that sequence so neatly from old to young? You know, it worries me when a theory depends on coincidence to produce results.
What is the lecture mainly about?
The correct answer is C. Explanations for why volcanoes occur in some locations. At the beginning of the lecture, the professor says that we know what tectonic plates are. and that most volcanoes occur at the boundaries of the tectonic plates. But some volcanoes do not. They occur in the middle of the tectonic plates. Then the professor asks, so how do we explain these volcanic anomalies, these exceptions to the general rule? This tells us that the lecture will be about the reasons why volcanoes occur in the middle of the tectonic plates.
According to the professor, why was the hotspot theory originally proposed?
A is correct. To explain prolonged volcanic activity far from plate boundaries, the professor says that in 1963, a geophysicist, Wilson, came up with a hotspot theory to explain how this particular type of volcanic activity can occur. By this particular type of volcanic activity, he means volcanic eruptions that occur in the middle of a tectonic plate, far from plate boundaries.
Why does the professor describe moving a sheet of heavy paper over a candle?
The correct answer is C. To illustrate one hypothesis for the way some volcanic anomalies are formed. This hypothesis is the plume hypothesis. The professor first introduced it, then explained what plumes are, and then began to explain how they work. That's when he used the example of paper and a candle.
Why does the professor discuss how high one of the Hawaiian Islands rises above the ocean floor?
D is correct. To emphasize that hotspot volcanoes can produce large amounts of magma. The professor says that's nearly 10 kilometers from the ocean floor to the highest point on the island. And then, he says, so you can imagine the huge amounts of magma or lava that have flowed up to form even just this one island.
According to the crack hypothesis, what causes a hotspot?
D is correct. Hot magma flows up at the point where a tectonic plate has been stretched thin. The professor says that according to the crack hypothesis, hotspots are created when a piece of the crust gets stretched thinner and thinner. As a result, small cracks open up in the crust, and it's through these cracks that magma pushes up to form volcanoes.
What is the professor's opinion of the two main hypotheses he presents?
The correct answer is B. Each hypothesis accounts for some, but not all volcanic anomalies. The professor says that the plume hypothesis is attractive, but even its supporters are uncomfortable claiming that it explains every volcanic anomaly. He later says that the Craig hypothesis is also attractive, but it doesn't explain the Hawaiian Islands. This means that neither theory explains all volcanic anomalies. This lecture and the following questions were quite challenging, right? But even so, it's possible to answer each question correctly, if you know how to take notes effectively. In fact, note-taking is one of the most important skills you need to develop in order to do well on the TOEFL listening section. But it's not easy. Some students don't take enough notes and miss key points that could have helped them answer the questions, while others try to write everything down and lose track of the main idea. If you want to master note-taking once and for all, join our TOEFL course. We'll not only do practice tests together, but we'll also break down lecture and conversation scripts to see what's worth writing down and what's not. I'll share essential strategies for the listening section that'll make answering questions much easier, and we'll cover important words, such as campus vocabulary, that you'll undoubtedly need in the listening, speaking, and even writing sections. If you're having trouble getting the score you need on the listening section, or on the TOEFL overall, just click on the link below to sign up. Now, here is some essential vocabulary from the lecture that you may encounter on all TOEFL sections. The crust. The crust is the surface of the Earth. Tectonic plates. Tectonic plates are parts of the Earth's surface. Boundaries, edges. Boundaries or edges are the lines that mark the limit of something. Molten rock. Molten rock is hot liquid rock. There are two types of molten rock, magma and lava. Magma is hot liquid rock that is below the surface, and lava is hot liquid rock that is on the surface. Plumes. Plumes are columns of very hot magma. A dormant volcano. This is a volcano that isn't active right now. Think of it as sleeping. An extinct volcano, on the other hand, is one that is no longer active. Think of it as dead. I'm planning to make a separate video on this topic because, as you can see, there are just so many words to cover. So if you're interested, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss it when it comes out. Let's move on to the next section.
Listen to a conversation between a student and a professor.
Hi, Professor. I was hoping to ask you a few questions about the class you're teaching next semester, the course on Polish drama. I was thinking of taking it.
Well, that's an upper division course. You don't look familiar to me. Are you a student in this department?
No, actually I'm not.
Okay. Have you had other classes in the Slavic languages department here or somewhere else?
No, that's the thing. I was just wondering how good my Polish would have to be, whether the class is taught in Polish or not.
Well, you'd have to have some knowledge of it. By that level, a lot of the students are quite fluent. Plus, there are some native speakers in the department. And we don't plan for it to happen, but it's pretty common for the discussions to kind of move in and out of English and Polish, and it can be difficult to follow. So, how well do you speak Polish?
Not so great. It's just that my father's from there, so I'm interested in learning about, Polish history, Polish culture. Plus, I'm studying drama. I'll probably major in it. I love plays, so I thought your course might be perfect.
To be honest with you, you have to realize that we'll be watching videos of performances and maybe, if we can swing it, even watch a live performance, and those won't necessarily be in translation. Also, texts are sometimes available in translation, but even then some references will be to the original. I'd hope you'd be fairly confident in reading.
To be honest, it sounds totally over my head.
You know what? I believe they'll be offering a survey course on Polish literature. Let me check here. Yes, I thought it was being offered this time. Professor Jaworski's teaching it. Let's see, it covers the major works, epic romantic poetry, the novels, And it does cover 1 or 2 plays.
And this is in English?
Yes, you'll be reading mostly English translations, and the discussions will be in English.
Novels and poetry.
They'll provide you with a great historical context for the plays, so when you do get to them, you're going to really have a feel for the times they lived in, so to speak. Plus, this course might also give you the impetus to learn more Polish. Get it to the level where you'd be ready for the other class.
What are the speakers mainly discussing?
B is correct. Whether the student should take an advanced course in Polish drama. This conversation was relatively easy, so I'll just give you the correct answers here.
According to the professor, what will students do in her class?
The correct answers are C and D. Use the Polish language in class discussions and watch recorded performances of Polish plays.
Why is the student interested in the professor's class?
The correct answers are A and D. He wants to learn about his family background, and the course is related to the student's intended course of study.
What does the professor think the student should do?
D is correct. Take a survey course in Polish literature before taking a Polish drama course.
What does the professor imply when she says this?
I'd hope you'd be fairly confident in reading.
C is correct. She is concerned that the student may not be able to read Polish. Vocabulary time. As I mentioned, this conversation was easy, so we only have 2 words worth noting. Over my head. Over my head means too hard for me to understand. Impetus. Impetus is a force that encourages a particular action. For example, plus, this course might also give you the impetus to learn more Polish. Time for the next lecture.
Listen to part of a lecture in a biology class.
Okay, today I'd like to spend some time going into more detail about symbiosis. Symbiosis, what is it? Anyone?
I thought it's when 2 organisms are in a relationship that they both benefit from. Well, at least that's what I thought it was until I did the reading last night. Now I'm kind of confused about it because the book used that definition to describe mutualism. Could you explain the difference?
Good. I was hoping that someone would bring that up. Sometimes scientists working in different fields use the term symbiosis to mean slightly different things, and it can get confusing. For example, when symbiosis is used as a synonym for mutualism. But there are quite a few of us out there who think there should be a clearer distinction made between the two. Okay, where to begin? The original definition of symbiosis is pretty simple. It simply means living together. So any close relationship between two organisms of different species would be considered a symbiotic relationship, including positive and negative relationships. Mutualism, then, is a kind of symbiosis, a specific type of symbiotic relationship where both organisms benefit somehow. So your book is correct. Now, I want to make it clear that the positive result from being in a mutualistic relationship doesn't have to be equal for both organisms. It's not a one-to-one ratio here. Is everyone with me so far? Symbiosis, general term. Mutualism, a narrower, more specific kind of symbiosis. Okay. Now, let's take a closer look at mutualistic relationships. I'll start off by describing a case of mutualism that involves a certain butterfly species found in South Africa and Australia. It's a good example of how dependence on a mutualistic relationship can vary. Okay, there's this butterfly family, and I'll spare you the fancy Latin name because it's not important for our purposes here. I'll call them coppers and blues. Well, because most members of this family have blue or copper-colored wings. I think this is one of the most interesting cases of mutualism. These butterflies require the presence of ants to complete their life cycle. Their interaction with ants is obligatory. So this is what happens. A female butterfly of these coppers and blues will lay eggs only on vegetation where there are ants of a particular species. The butterflies can smell. Ants leave behind pheromones, a special chemical signal. The butterfly recognizes the ant's pheromones on the plant. And then the newly hatched butterflies, the caterpillars, will feed on this plant after they hatch from the eggs. As the caterpillar gets a little older and finds shelter under nearby rocks or stones to protect itself from predators, it's always attended or escorted by ants. And it always makes its way back to the host plant to feed, guided by the ants, the ant escort service, so to speak. Now, why would the ants go through all this trouble? What's their benefit? Mary?
It's probably related to food.
You're onto something.
Okay, ants feed on sweet stuff, right? So the caterpillar must have some kind of special access to honey or sugars or something like that. Maybe caterpillars produce honey somehow. On second thought, I'm probably way off.
You're pretty close, actually. The caterpillars have a honey gland, an organ that secretes an amino acid and carbohydrate liquid. The caterpillar secretes the liquid from the honey gland, rather large quantities, enough to feed several ants. But what makes this relationship obligatory for the caterpillar? Well, if the ants don't feed regularly on the liquid from the caterpillar's honey gland, the gland overloads and gets infected. The infection will kill the caterpillar, and it'll never reach its final stage of development, becoming a butterfly. John?
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm following here. The caterpillar needs the ants, or it won't make it to the stage where it can become a butterfly. And the ants do this because they get an easy meal out of it, right? But the ants don't absolutely need the caterpillar for survival because they can get food from other places, right? So it's still called mutualism even though it seems like the caterpillar's getting way more out of it. Oh, wait, you said they don't have to equally benefit. Never mind, sorry.
Yes, but there is a type of mutualism where the relationship is necessary for both organisms to survive. It's called obligatory mutualism, and we'll talk about that in the next class.
What is the professor mainly discussing?
The correct answer is B, a specific kind of symbiotic relationship between organisms. The professor said that mutualism is a type of symbiosis. More precisely, it's a specific type of symbiotic relationship in which both organisms benefit in some way. Then the professor said, "Now, let's take a closer look at mutualistic relationships." This means that in this lecture, the professor is going to discuss mutualistic relationships, which are specific kinds of symbiotic relationships between organisms. That's why answer B is correct.
What does the professor imply about the term symbiosis?
A is correct. It's often used with too narrow a meaning. The professor said that some scientists use the term symbiosis as a synonym for mutualism. But the term symbiosis is more general. It simply means living together. Mutualism, on the other hand, is a narrow term. It means living together and getting some benefit from it. Because scientists sometimes use the term symbiosis instead of mutualism, it's being used with too narrow a meaning, so answer A is correct.
How do the butterflies mentioned by the professor facilitate the relationship between caterpillars and ants of a certain species?
C is correct. The butterflies lay their eggs on plants where the ants are present. The professor said, "A female butterfly of these coppers and blues will only lay eggs on vegetation, where there are ants of a particular species."
In the example the professor mentions, how do the ants benefit from their interaction with the caterpillars?
The correct answer is D. The caterpillars produce a liquid from a species gland to feed the ants. The professor mentioned that the caterpillars have honey glands. They secrete the liquid from these glands, and this liquid is enough to feed the ants.
What aspect of mutualism does the professor illustrate with the example of the caterpillars and the ants?
The correct answer is B. It's not necessary for both organisms to benefit equally from the relationship. Answer B is correct, because the caterpillars need the ants to survive, but the ants do not. They can get food from other places, so the caterpillars and the ants do not benefit equally.
What can be inferred about the student when she says this?
Maybe caterpillars produce honey somehow. On second thought, I'm probably way off.
D is correct. She doubts that her statement is correct. The student said, on second thought, I'm probably way off, which means I'm probably completely wrong. Let's review key vocabulary from this lecture. Caterpillars. Caterpillars are little animals that look like this. Way off. Way off means to be completely wrong or mistaken. I'm way off means I'm very wrong or far from being right. To hatch. To hatch means for a baby animal to come out of an egg. Newly hatched butterflies are butterflies that have just come out of their cocoons. To escort. To escort someone means to go with them to make sure they're safe. To secrete. To secrete means to produce liquid. A gland. A gland is an organ that secretes or produces liquid chemicals. Now, let's listen to the next lecture.
Listen to part of a lecture in an American history class.
We've been talking about the transformation, the industrialization of the United States economy in the 19th century. As the country shifted from an agricultural to an industrial base, political power shifted too. Businesses became a lot of power went from the government into the hands of business leaders. So, why did this happen? How did an elite group, a few business giants, how did they end up dominating, controlling a number of important national industries in the last quarter of the 19th century? How did they get to be so dominant? How did they figure out? How did they take advantage of the new industrialization of American society? Well, consider the example of Andrew Carnegie and the steel industry. We've already discussed the development of a national network, a national system of railroads. Well, this growth created a tremendous demand for steel. A national railroad system needs a lot of railroad tracks, right? And Carnegie seized the opportunity. He built the world's most modern steel mill, and he came up with a system of business organization called vertical integration. Vertical integration just means that every single activity of a particular industry's processing is performed by a single company. In the case of the steel industry, this means the mining of iron ore, the transportation used to get ore from the mine to the mill, turning the ore into the steel, the manufacturing process, and sales. Carnegie controlled all of these. He practiced vertical integration on such a large scale that he practically owned the whole steel industry. This, of course, gave him a lot of political clout. Just a quick sketch, but you get the idea, right? Here's another example. John D. Rockefeller. Rockefeller owned an oil refinery, but he wanted to expand his business. Since there was lots of competition in the industry, he thought the smart way to go about it would be to buy his competitors' businesses. But at the time, it was illegal for one corporation to control another. So what he did was, he created an organizational structure called a trust. A trust is, I don't have to go into that now. What matters is that a trust created a single, central management team, and that team directed the activities of what otherwise still appeared to be independent companies. This new, legal entity worked so well that at one point Rockefeller controlled 90% of the country's oil refineries, which again gave him lots of political power. So you've got two different approaches to expanding a business, and both were quite effective. Of course, these weren't the only two examples. A number of big businesses run by powerful individuals developed across, a wide range of industries, like railroads, food processing, electricity. But what they all had in common was the government let them operate pretty much how they wanted to. So why did they do that? Why did the government keep such a low profile and allow individuals to gain so much control of the industries? Well, obviously, they had the wealth and the power to influence political leaders. But also, the truth is that these industry leaders made a significant contribution. Their investments in technologies led to the development of many new production techniques, which strengthened the economy, and many of them gave lots of money to charity. Andrew Carnegie was particularly admired for his generosity. But there was one thing in particular that gave them power, and that's they were beneficiaries, probably the biggest beneficiaries of a theory, a dominant political theory in the 19th century, something called laissez-faire doctrine. Laissez-faire roughly means let it alone, and that pretty much summarized the theory's philosophy. The idea was that government should leave business alone, allow it to operate unregulated. Legislatures weren't supposed to pass a lot of laws or worry about regulating business practices. When people did challenge a company's business conduct, I mean in court cases, well, the few laws that did exist were usually interpreted in favor of business interests. But over time, it started becoming increasingly obvious and troubling to the public that some of these big companies simply had too much control. There were criticisms that owners had too much opportunity to exploit workers and consumers, because they could control prices and wages. And small business owners and small farmers couldn't compete. So there was bad press, bad publicity. Enough that the government eventually felt it had to do something. So it passed two key pieces of legislation. One law was designed to regulate the prices set by the railroads. Another made it illegal for trusts to be used to limit competition. Both were aimed squarely at reducing the exclusive control that existed in some industries.
What is the lecture mainly about?
C is correct. Reasons that business leaders gained political power in the late 19th century United States. The professor said, a lot of power went from the government into the hands of business leaders. And then asked, why did this happen? So it's clear that C is the correct answer.
Why does the professor discuss vertical integration?
The correct answer is A. To explain how Andrew Carnegie gained control of the steel industry. The professor mentioned Andrew Carnegie and the steel industry. He said that when the demand for steel increased, Carnegie built the most modern steel mill and came up with the idea of vertical integration, which allowed him to perform all the activities of the steel industry, and as a result, practically own the entire industry.
In what two ways did business leaders make a positive contribution to the United States in the 19th century?
The correct answers are A and D. They invested in new production technologies, and they supported charitable causes. In the lecture, the professor said that industry leaders made a significant contribution. Their investments in technologies led to the development of many new production techniques. And many of them gave lots of money to charity.
According to the professor, what is the main reason that some businesses were able to become powerful during the 19th century?
C is correct. The government did not impose many regulations on businesses. The professor said that one thing in particular that gave businesses power was the idea that the government should leave business alone and allow it to operate unregulated. As a result, legislators weren't supposed to pass a lot of laws or worry about regulating business practices.
Why did the government pass new laws aimed at businesses?
B is correct. To respond to complaints from the public. In the lecture, the professor said, but over time, it started becoming increasingly obvious and troubling to the public that some of these big companies simply had too much control. There were criticisms that owners had too much opportunity to exploit workers and consumers because they could control prices and wages. So there was bad press, bad publicity, enough that the government eventually felt it had to do something.
Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
A trust is, I don't have to go into that now. What matters is that a trust created a single, central management team, and that team directed the activities of what otherwise still appeared to be independent companies.
What does the professor imply about the term trust?
The correct answer is B. It's unnecessary to explain the details of the term. The professor said, a trust is? Well, I don't have to go into that now. So it's clear she didn't think she needed to explain what a trust is at that point in the lecture. The most important words from this lecture are to shift. To shift means to move. To seize the opportunity. To seize the opportunity is to use the opportunity. Iron ore. Iron ore is rock from which iron can be extracted. A mine. A mine is a pit in the earth from which minerals are extracted. A steel mill. A steel mill is a factory where steel is made. An oil refinery. An oil refinery is a factory that turns crude oil into usable petroleum products, such as diesel fuel, gasoline, and more. A beneficiary. A beneficiary is a person who receives money or benefits as a result of something else. A beneficiary of a theory is the person who benefits from that theory. A legislator. A legislator is someone who is responsible for making laws. This is the end of the listening section. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to let me know in the comments below how many correct answers you have, and which of the new words we discussed after each part were new to you. Also, if you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon to be notified when the next video comes out. And remember, scoring 100 plus on the TOEFL isn't rocket science. It's the little things you do that make all the difference. As always, I wish you all a stellar TOEFL score. Until next time.